Hey guys, Brian Stevens here. I have Carl White from The Marketing Animals, as you know. And I usually, before Carl and I start one of these, we have a conversation beforehand about what our topics are going to be. And I always think to myself, man, I wish I would have recorded that. So I'm basically just jumping Carl on this one. I said, I'm not even going to tell you what the topic is because I want this to be kind of top of mind and right what hit your brain, hit your mouth, no speed bumps in between. And this is kind of a topic, Carl, to me that it's like playing chess. It takes a moment to learn, a lifetime to master. So it seems like an easy question, but I think there's a lot more meat on the bone than people think. And if you don't think there's meat on the bone, then your business is suffering right now. I happen to know for a fact that there's 5 mortgage companies that are going to be out of business this time next week. I know this to be the truth. There will probably be a couple owners who are going to be in jail for some of the things that they're doing.
Yeah.
And most of these loan officers don't even realize that they're going to be searching for places to house their license.
Yeah.
We know the numbers. They're all superlatives. The worst this, the highest that. Our production is down. Our housing starts are down. Our existing inventory is down. Our rates are up. We all know all the numbers here. And it's really setting up to be a long and arduous winter for originators.
Hi, this is Carl White. Hey, I need your help for something that we are signing a petition that I'm personally going to deliver to the U.S. Congress to stop trigger leads. If you just go to stoptriggerleads.com, stoptriggerleads.com, sign the petition, forward it to your friends. Once you sign the petition, it'll give you a whole page on tips and tricks to keep the triggers from calling your people, scripts and things to say to your clients to help prevent them, and what to say to your client if they tell you that trigger lead is starting to call. Most important of all, sign the petition, forward the petition to your friends. Thanks a lot.
So I think people are looking for solutions. If you're not, you need to. I think you need to rebuild and reboot your business. But here's my simple question to you. For loan officers right now who want to stay in this business, what's their first actionable items that they need to do right now if they want to be here in 6 months?
So I didn't know what you were going to ask.
Right.
But I would say it really hasn't changed, Brian. I think a lot of people are thinking, this is the worst market. This is the most challenging market. And if I look at my own personal numbers as a branch manager, this is kind of what it was before we had the boom. Like before we had the 2021 and maybe part of 22, I guess. Before we had that boom, this is kind of the way it was. So, and I might be off on it. You're way more in tune to the numbers than I am. You do a lot more research than me. Okay, frankly, that's your job. Yeah, you spend a lot of time doing that kind of thing. So for me, this isn't really any different than it's ever been. It's spending more time prospecting and less time getting ready to prospect. I think too many people spend too much time investigating on what I should be doing instead of the actual doing of it. And it's funny you bring this question up. I just literally write myself promise notes. Like I, Carl White, promise to, and I just show them myself. And the one I wrote just yesterday says, I promise not to learn anything new. So in other words, I've turned off all my incoming training because I buy people's training on how to be a better salesperson, branch manager, insert in, connect with people, whatever that thing is. And I promised myself, I'm not going to buy another course. I'm not going to take another class. I'm going to do what I already know to do. And I think that's, part of the always looking for something else, always looking for that next shiny whistle per se I think a large part of that is just simply creative avoidance. And we all know what that is, creating reasons to avoid the very thing that actually brings in the new business. So I honestly think, Brian, it's just simply doing more prospecting, spending more hours prospecting. I go around the country like you do, Brian. Sometimes we're at the same place, same time. And one of my favorite questions I love to ask people is, what's the number one thing that makes you most of your money? What's the one activity, right? And I love hearing the different answers to that. And not that there's any one right answer to that. For sure, there's not, right? So what's the number one activity that makes you most of your money? The surprising thing is most people have to think about what that activity, they don't know. And it's like, maybe, and it's not their fault. Maybe nobody's ever pointed out to them. Maybe that'd be a good thing to figure out is, what is the number one activity that makes me most of my money? So once they tell me what that activity is, part 2 of that question is, how many hours, minutes, if any, did you spend doing that activity last week? Brian, you know what the average answer of how many hours, minutes that the average loan officer spends doing the number one thing that makes them most of their money, whatever that thing is, whatever social media, realtors, teaching class, like whatever that thing is. You know how many hours, minutes that the average loan officer self-professes to do that each week?
So this is they're not catching fish. They're being honest.
Yes.
I would say less than an hour.
Zero. Zero is the number one answer. When we do these blind studies, 0 hours is the number one answer.
I believe that.
For how many hours, minutes, if any, I spent doing the number one thing that makes me most of my money. So a very long answer to your very short and pointed question, like whatever that thing is that brought in your last 10 loans, whatever that was, do more of that and less of everything else. For me and my team, doesn't make it the right way, right? Because there's a lot of different, there's not a lot of different ways. There's probably, 3 or 4 or 5, probably pretty true ways to make that happen. For me, always the easiest way has frankly just been referral. There's 2 things: referral partner marketing, like in my case, mostly real estate agents, because 67% of all loans closed with the loan officer the real estate agent recommended. 67% of all loans that close with the loan officer the real estate agent recommended. Why wouldn't I go after that 67%? And then the other thing that I think that we do very well, we spend a lot of our time doing, is marketing to our own past database, which a lot of people, somebody just this morning said, well, Carl, all my clients are in 2 and 3% loans. They're not moving, right? What a lot of loan officers don't understand is that most our referrals from our past database, most of our closings from our past database aren't them. It's their friends, family, and coworkers, because we ask them, can we count on them to send us over their friends, family, coworkers are looking to buy, sell, or refinance? We ask that question of our past database. And so to say, well, I'm not marketing my past database because they all have 2 and 3% interest rate loans, which may be true, you're missing out on the main source of leads coming from the past database. It's not them, it's their friends, family, and coworkers. So I would do those 2 things. For me, referral partner marketing and marketing to my past database.
So it's really interesting. I was listening to a guy talk the other day who looked normal and acted normal, and he started talking about how he has paralysis from catastrophic thinking. That something terrible is going to happen to him, not next year, but not even tomorrow, but today. And how it creates a paralysis with them. A lot of people have catastrophic thinking in this business right now, and it's like and don't take this the wrong way if you're a loan officer watching this, but it's kind of like that proverbial story about the donkey who starved to death because it had 2 piles of hay to eat from, couldn't figure out which one didn't eat either. And as we're going forward with our business right now, what you're saying is well, okay, yes, there's numbers, there's analytics, you can support anything that you're looking for, but that's not getting you closer to your goal. It's almost as if you're saying, continue working with your best habits as if this market is a normal market, because frankly, if you do that, chances are it'll look a hell of a lot more normal than getting caught up in the minutia of all the numbers and the conversation and the dialogue that's taking place in the industry.
Yeah, and I think part of it is the call reluctance is probably at least the number one, or maybe number 2 problems that loan officers deal with. And I think a lot of times where that comes from, we could do a whole nother thing on just that. I think a lot of times where that comes from is they're thinking, well, as soon as I have the courage, as soon as I have the confidence, then I'll make those calls. And I got some breaking news. There is no overcoming the fear, right? There's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Like, courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is doing what you need to do, even though you're afraid, right? There's not a soldier I can imagine that goes up to the front line, not comparing the calls to front line, but is what came to my mind.
Right.
There's not a soldier around that doesn't feel fear when they're running up that beach, per se. They feel the fear, they just do it anyway. In their case, they're getting shot at, which I'm no way comparing what we're doing to what those brave men and women do. But it's not waiting for the courage to do something, it's doing it while you have that fear. Hell, that's what I did. You 10 minutes ago, you texted me, said, hey, I got an idea. You up for a quick video? And I'm like, yeah. Oh crap, I hope I'm up to the task, right? Just being honest.
Sure.
And you said, I'm not even going to ask you what I'm not even going to tell you what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to just hit the click record button. Dude, I'm afraid sitting here right now. I don't know if you can tell or not, but I'm sitting there going, God, I hope this is going okay. I hope it's going okay. But I know the action happens when or the magic happens when we feel that fear and say, dude, I'd love to do the interview with you.
But isn't that kind of the same thing with calling? It's an impulse response system. It's you have to kind of be able to have a conversation. A lot of people talk about scripting with me when it comes to calls.
Yeah.
I say, okay, I get the idea of scripting. It makes sense to me, but every conversation needs to take on a life of its own. And if we're following the script too closely, we're not really, the meaning of the call, the purpose of that call is getting lost in the script. Do you agree with that?
I'm not sure that I do, Brian, just be perfectly honest. Cause like, if you ask me what my phone number is, I'm going to give you a script, right? And the script is going to be, whatever area code, I'm making it up, 813-555-1212, right? So if I change that script by one word and change that number by one number, and it's not exactly the same way, when you call that number, you're going to get an undesired result. You're, in that case where you're wanting to, I'm honored that you'd want to call me. And that when you called me, if I don't give you that perfect script and give you one different number, you're not going to call me. You're going to call somebody else, which might be a better call, and it might not be good, but it's not going to be me. And so I think having, like, when I call my past database, I absolutely read a script. I go through a very, very prescribed script. However, when they say, how about you, Carl? I have a guideline, not a script. So my guideline, how about you, Carl, is not to talk about me, because frankly, they don't care, right? They're just being polite. And so my guideline for, they say, what about you, Carl? Things are going up pretty good over here. Maria and the kids are all going well. And then click right back to another question of them, and then do my close. Hey, I know you're busy. I'll let you get back to it. Just want to know if I can count on you. Anytime a friend, family, coworker is looking to buy, sell, or refinance, can I count on you? Give me a call. So it's a combination of a script, guideline, script. And so I think scripts are a good thing.
I think we're kind of saying the same thing. Being able to be fluid off that script, having a starting point is good. But like with your analogy with a phone number, the difference between a person and calling somebody is that I'm not trying to compel that call to reach you. We know if I dial that number, that's going to be the result. When I'm calling that person, they're not going to be as predictable as dialing a number. And so the ability to have that conversation is kind of what I'm thinking is the options of getting off script rather than being so entirely rigid with it. I have another question kind of in this line for you too. And I'm hearing this a lot from loan officers right now. And I agree with you on this point. They say, I'm listening to other people talk right now, and everyone's talking about making the phone calls and all this old school stuff. And that's yesterday's marketing. I need to know what the latest and greatest thing is. Are you hearing any of that?
I'm hearing it for the people that's struggling, but not the successful people.
I see that. I agree with that.
The successful people are doing the old school and the phone calls, because that's actually working. And the people that are struggling are looking for something else other than picking up the phone. And they're in for a hard time. They're in for a hard time. I saw a thing, and I think we talked about this before, Brian, where there was a study done by Next Gen where they said they polled the public, where did you find your last loan officer? 3% was social media. 3. So while we're looking for, and I like social media, don't get me wrong, but it's responsible for 3% of our closings. And so I find that those loan officers that are struggling are, please tell me a way to do this that I don't actually have to talk with people on a phone. And I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm just saying you're going to severely limit yourself with your success by taking that stance.
See, that's, it's interesting, because I've thought about this. I'm like, okay, if there's a desire to find something other than calling, I started going down that road. What is it? What is it that people are looking for? And frankly, I haven't found a solution to it. There's so many more things that can happen in a conversation than any other form of communication that it by far makes it the most superior. Have you had the same?
It goes back to that old cliche that we always revert back to, that when you were looking to date the lovely Mrs. Stevens, or in my case, the lovely Mrs. White, I didn't do a Facebook meme to them. I called her up. I called her up. And for you, it worked. Lucky you. I met your wife, wonderful person. And for me, lucky me. And so I know we always go back to that, but it's so true. And it's not that we can't use these other things to help it, so that when we call them, like Brian, I mean, you're a very humble guy, but you're famous, right? And you always, every time I say that, you kind of shun me off, but you know what, you're famous. And doing your social media and your videos in such a brilliant way has made you famous, so that when you do call somebody, what you reached out to me, say, hey, Carl, you interested? Brian Stevens, yes, of course I am. I'm always interested in anything you're wanting to do. And so I think these other things can make us famous is the right word, but recognizable.
Yeah.
So that when we do make those phone calls, when we do see them at the open house, when we do see them at the real estate association, they go, hey, that's Brian Stevens, right? And so when you come up to them, they're more willing, oh, dude, of course I know you. And so I think there's definitely a place for all these other, let's call them widgets, right? And there's some really good widgets, but I think relying on the widgets to do all the heavy lifting and bypassing the phone call is the method of what we call struggle bunnies. Like it's the people that's really, really, really struggling. So those things are the salt and pepper to the steak and potatoes. And I like salt and pepper, but it's not the steak and potatoes.
See, I agree with you on this 100%. It creates a certain level of familiarity to where when somebody sees you, half the battle's over because they kind of feel like they know who you are. And so you don't have to start by selling yourself or feel like you have to sell yourself because you build that familiarity with people in your sphere of influence. I've always said this with social media. It's as a loan officer, you're not only your best asset, your only asset is you. Like nobody's getting a loan from you because you have a stagecoach on your business card. They're going because of who you are. And when we use technology to replace us and depersonalize our business, we lose. When we can use social media and technology to enhance us, then we win. And that's exactly what you're talking about. So I think we're kind of thinking along the same lines.
I think, and just in closing here, and I know this is probably going longer than you intended, but like
it's perfect.
I'm thinking of a couple examples like Athena Penne. She just got in the business 14 months ago, picked up the phone, started making phone calls. She closed 7 loans last month. Sharon Wolford, I think she was at 13 loans last month. Mary Lee Brown, when she started, and I hope it's okay for me to share this, in January, she goose-egged like many of us did, right? January is a tough month. July, she closed 13. Julie Greed, I think in August, I think she had eight locked in underwriting. I just talked to Sarah Cox this morning. She closed, I think it was 13 loans the month before. And I think this month she closed, I think she just said it's more. I think it was like 8, something like that. And it's just making these phone calls. Or Tammy Saul, I think last month, I think it was 57 loans. I think that's right. It was 57 loans last month. Just her own personal production. This is not a team of 15 loan officers. Just her. And she's a phone girl, right? She just works the phone. And so I think of all these people I spoke to, none of them, their main platform is anything. I mean, they do other things, but their main platform is simply working the phone. So if you find yourself a little struggling, it's not your fault. And I just want you to know it's going to be okay if we simply just pick up the phone and do those things that brought in our last 10 loans, whether that was last week, last month, or maybe it took all of last year to close those 10 loans. Look for that common connection. Like, what was the activity that actually brought those loans in? Do more of that, less of everything else. You probably don't need to know anything else, which sounds kind of strange for a mortgage trainer to say, but I'm just being, straight up here. You probably don't need any new information. It's removing the clutter and all the stuff that maybe you were doing it last year and the year before. Maybe some loans were coming in. Those loans were flying in the boat, whether you had any bait on the hook or not. Now we need to put some bait on the hook, right? Maybe that's a bad cliche there, but because there's no hook and we're not baiting anybody, but you get the idea. So anyway, hopefully this was what you was looking for, Brian.
It's absolutely perfect, Carl. Thanks so much for your time, and I appreciate you playing along with my shenanigans on this.
I appreciate you, my brother.